requested by there you go. Now it's formally being recorded it's been requested by many of you across Europe, and you'll see the three high performance sessions that are planned. The final session on the 30th of June is at the moment called Wildcard, and what we will be doing at the very end of this seminar is giving you options, 4 different options for that wildcard session, and we will do that through running a poll. So we want to make sure that we are giving you the content that you see is the most important. So I'll come back and explain that right at the very end of the seminar, but we will then have a 6th seminar that will be running at the end of June. So on to today, we have a fantastic presenters for you, real experts around cleaners. We have our global product manager, Michael Petzold, who will take us through an overview of XBC with an introduction, the range, and importantly to share some successful field cases that we have and also opportunities that could be there for you with your existing customer base and also with future prospects. Steve and Mark work in our global technical application engineering team, and they support a lot of the very large global customers that we have, and they're real experts. You may recall they were also supporting our metalworking session a couple of weeks ago, and again they're real experts around cleaners as well, and they will be providing some expert advice on troubleshooting, so the types of things that you should be looking out for in your customers' premises, and this will be broken down into a process analysis, cleaner control, and then a guide on troubleshooting. And again, that was similar to the content that they took us through for metalwork. And then Kai Hecker will take us through the marketing assets that are available before we come back to question and answers. So really hope you enjoyed today's session, and with that I'm going to pass you straight over to Michael.
So I hope everybody can hear me now. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you and your families are healthy and fit in these days. My name is Michael Petzold, and I'm Global Product Manager at Castrol for different metalworking categories, which involves cleaners, rust preventives, forming oils, quenching fluids, and slideway oils. I'm really happy to start the session today with our innovative industrial cleaners range, TechniClean XBC. Before we start looking into product range details, I would like to share some key market trends that have been drivers for the development of the TechniClean XBC product offer. So you see 4 key mega trends here on that slide. One is on manufacturing technology advances, one on sustainability, one on environmental and legislative, and last but not least, Industry 4.0 and digitalization. So, and when you look at this, it becomes obvious that cleaning has meanwhile stepped over the years from only being a necessary evil. It really adds value to our customers. So just imagine you are a customer manufacturing complex metal parts in a sophisticated machining process, and a small chip or a fine compromises all the efforts, leading to a functional failure or damage. And this is why manufacturing technology is also a cleaner's advantage. So there are increasing cleanliness requirements given by our customer. They even standardize in some markets, which also leads to the fact that cleaning technology changed to become more effective. Something like high pressure applications or even robot technology that more and more comes into play in cleaning operations to make cleaning processes more flexible and effective. Another important topic is sustainability. So most of our customers are obviously looking to improve their CO2 footprint. And particularly on cleaners, temperature is a significant energy contributor to that. So wherever you can lower the temperature in a cleaning process, it directly reduces the energy cost and the CO2 footprint. Another aspect is obviously bath life. The longer the bath life, the better the profile in terms of waste disposal, in terms of maintenance and waste disposal cost. So any activity, any kind of feature that can help extending the bath life contributes to that. The next point is environmental legislative. I mean, we all are struggled in the last couple of years by, different legislation comes into play. I mean, whether it's the big one like REACH or any other kind of legislation, biocide legislation, and so on and so forth. But this also has been taken into account when developing a new product technology, something like, formulating without boron or formaldehyde releasing agents, and also not using strong complexing agents like EDTA and NTA. The use of secondary amines is also restricted for many years, but there is something to say on MEA at a later stage, which also has been considered in the development. And last but not least, Industry 4.0 and digitalization. I mean, this is not a direct scope here, but there are some good examples later on in the slide deck that also where also in digitalization and Industry 4.0 plays a role. So next slide, please. So I think getting to the range, I think the most important thing to know at the beginning of what's in scope and what's out of scope. So here you see our industrial product, industrial cleaners categories, which involves solvent cleaners, maintenance cleaners, and aqueous process cleaners. And technically, XBC clearly belongs to the aqueous process cleaners range and category. So within that, you see interoperational products, so products that are used within manufacturing process between manufacturing steps, and products that can be used as a final wash product. And there is another category called heavy duty cleaners. These are products that are predominantly used to remove heavy duty soils. So you see it's striked out here, and it's because the fact that with these is removing heavy duty soils, you typically require highly alkaline products with a pH of 11, 12 plus, which is clearly not in scope with technical in XBC. So we're focusing on manufacturing processes where the requirement is on interoperation and final wash operations, which leads us to the main market sectors where these technologies are used. This is predominantly in automotive, in engine manufacturing, transmission manufacturing, and component manufacturing. In the machinery manufacturing sector for gears, electronics, and pump compressors manufacturing, as well as in aerospace on the engine and components manufacturing side. And again, on metals, primary and secondary, technically XBC is not typically designed for that particular sector, because in this sector, predominantly heavy duty cleaners are in use. Okay, next slide, please. Another one. So now we're getting to the range. So in end of 2018, we launched two products, technically in 80 XBC and 90 XBC. And the headline shows that actually the legislation drive has driven us to develop those two versions. The key difference between the two is that one product is formulated with MEA and the other one is formulated without MEA. The reason for that is that we see different markets around the world, including Europe, where monoethanolamine, which is a key alkaline contributor in such kind of synthetic formulations, is restricted because its potential alkalinity and its vapor pressure into the environment. So that means we have legislation as well as customers specifically asking for products that are formulated without MEA. Otherwise, the product, they look pretty similar. They do the same job. And as you can see from the profile below, the main difference is really that the one product, the technically 90 XBC, is formulated without MEA. It's also fair to say that while doing this, it also has an impact on cost. So formulating a product with without monoethanolamine is obviously causing higher product cost, which is also then reflected in the positioning of the product itself. Next slide, please. On top of that, after the launch of the first 80 XBC and 90 XBC, we just recently introduced a new product to the Techniclean XBC family, which is Techniclean 45 XBC. And as you can see, the scope of the product in terms of application is different to the first one, while at 80 and 90 XBC are predominantly multi-metal compatible and used in interoperational final wash applications. The 45 XBC is more dedicated towards ferrous metals. It contains MEA, and the main focus and scope on this product was on corrosion protection for interoperational storage and transportation. profile of the product also makes it well suited because of that for final wash operation, but it can also be used as an RP boost, an alkalinity boost to any kind of metalworking application like coolants and cleaners. You see in the profile that there are some kind of limitations in terms of multi-metal compatibility, but it's clearly the corrosion protection that is the main scope and the value of the product. Next slide, please. This is an attempt to compare the range that you may know, the existing range versus the new products. So it's a nice smiley approach, but a red smiley does not mean the product is bad. It's just a relative comparison to kind of show limitations and strengths of particular products. And if you can see, some of you may be familiar with TechniClean SF or TechniClean HP in Europe. You see certain limitations with these products. So TechniClean SF has a certain limitation in terms of high pressure application. It's strongly boron containing, and it also formulated with monoethanolamine. If you look at TechniClean HP, which is a multi-metal product as well, we know the detergency power has some limits. The cast iron corrosion protection is not the best one. It also contains a little bit of boron, and it's also formulated with MEA. So what we were trying to do with the design and the formulation of the XBC range is trying to eliminate those kind of restrictions as best as we, or limitations as best as we can. So when you look at the 80 and the 90 XBC, you see a lot of green smileys, which means we think, and we also have the evidence from lab results as well as from field trial results that we could improve those attributes where we have seen limitations with other products. With the 45 XBC, of course, the multi-metal compatibility is not as good, and that's not what it's been designed for, but that's the reason why there are two smileys in the cast iron corrosion protection box, because it's predominantly dedicated to provide excellent corrosion protection. So what you also can see here, I mean, technically 90 XBC has small green smileys across the board, but what you can also see is one line which says recyclability in XBB, and so we're getting to the next slide. What does it mean? So with all the features and that we have seen on the previous slide, with the fact that we were trying to eliminate the limitations that we have seen with the other products, we've also designed the technology to be fully compatible from a formulation perspective with our alusol and high sol XBB coolants. So that kind of string here, this genome string, is actually representing that actually the formulation as such, they are fully compatible. Next slide, please. So what does it mean in practice? So again, we're having in scope industries where we are cleaning off soluble coolants or light metalworking oils, and where the cleaning process is an integral part of the manufacturing chain, like it's seen in the illustration below. The main applications used to be spray, high pressure, and flood wash. And what you typically see here when you have a machining process, that after the coolant, let's say, is being cleaned off in the cleaning process, after the cleaning solution is exhausted, it's typically been disposed, which is indicated by the nice guy at the bottom that is putting a dollar bill into the basket. So actually, the product is used up, and the typical traditional process as the product's going to be disposed, and a new makeup is being made in the cleaning process. So with the compatibility between XBB and XBC, there is the opportunity to use TechniClean XBC cleaning solution within the alusol and high sol XBB emulsion system. So that means TechniClean XBC can be recycled into the XBB coolant. Next slide, please. So as a summary, I think this kind of nice movie, and I hope it works, really kind of summarizes well the benefits that we see with the development of our new innovative TechniClean XBC technology. It's not about the performance as such, it's also about lowering the waste volume, lowering the water consumption, and overall reducing the operational cost at the customer side. And this is given by the features and benefits that we see with the product as such, but also predominantly given by the option to be able to recycle the cleaner back into the coolant system. And if we can play the video now, that would be great.
As you know, when cleaning fluids are underperforming, they can compromise productivity and increase operating costs. Also, the coolant elements they wash off can push up the development of foam and create unwanted residues on parts and components. The result? More frequent and costly disposal and replacement of the wash fluid. There is an alternative. Castrol TechniClean XBC is a high-performance cleaner that doesn't raise operating costs, it cuts them. TechniClean XBC is formulated without problem chemicals such as boron and formaldehyde-releasing biocides. It has low foam characteristics over a wide temperature range and excellent emulsification properties for longer bath life. And that's not all. TechniClean XBC can also be recycled. It's compatible with Castrol's Alisol and Hysol XBB cutting fluids, which means when it reaches its end of life, TechniClean XBC can be reused straight from the cleaner bath to replace water in the central coolant system, without compromising the performance of the machining process. One automotive OEM supplier has reduced waste cleaning solution from 400,000 litres to 150,000 litres, recycled 250,000 litres, and also cut operational costs by €25,000 a year. With TechniClean XBC, you use less water, you reduce waste, and you reduce wastewater costs by up to 60%, all while maintaining high levels of cleaning performance. TechniClean XBC. Contact your Castrol representative to find out more.
So, as you can see, as a nice video, which summarizes well the section before, and we have a poll here. So what is TechniClean 45 XBC designed for? So it's a little bit of a sense check how well you have listened to my previous conversation. So if you start the poll, please, that would be great. Don't know how long it takes to get the result. Let's give it a little bit of time. Here we go. So 58% say ferrous metals and strong corrosion preventive. 11% say multi-metal high pressure applications, and 31% say both answers are correct. The correct answer is B. 58% are correct. TechniClean 45 XBC is the cleaner that has just been added and complements our 80 and 90 XBC in the range, which is designed to provide excellent corrosion protection on ferrous metals. Thank you very much. So majority is right. Next slide, please. So now you've heard a lot about, how and why we have designed TechniClean XBC. So now we're getting into a very important section, which is around experience from the field. So we've done a lot of test evaluations, which is fine, but now real life is coming. And we have a couple of good cases that I would like to share with you. The first one is not really a customer case, but I think it's even important. It's about the claim we are making on high pressure suitability with our TechniClean 90 XBC. So you see here on the left top hand side, there is an industrial cleaning machine. It's at the cleaning equipment manufacturer, but it's not a lab machine. It's a machine you typically find at the customers out there, at automotive customers. So really close to what happens in real life. And on the middle, you see the parameters we have used to test TechniClean 80 and 90 XBC. It says here 1150 bars. We went up to 1,200 bars of high pressure application. And on the right-hand side, you see it's 32 degrees, roughly speaking. So the bath has not been heated. The 32 degrees was basically just coming through the friction of the high pressure pump. So on the left bottom side, you see the foam creation on of 2% in DI water with TechniClean 80 and 90 XBC. You see here virtually there's no foam. The product is absolutely stable, and workable in high pressure system. And the problem with high pressure pumps is that when you get foam, you obviously get into you can get into cavitation of the pump because of air being in the fluid, which could become quite expensive. So a high pressure pump, I can't recall, but I think it's something like 40,000 euros for a high pressure pump. So on the right-hand side, we said, okay, this is an ideal situation if we have a fresh Techniclean 80 and 90 XBC. On the right-hand side, we were also topping up the system with 1.6% of alusol SL51 XBB, which is supposed to be a typical contamination to the bath. And you see here a little bit more foam creation, but it's absolutely not critical. The high pressure pump was working properly. And so finally, this kind of test regime has ended up that we finally got an approval on Hammelmann approval on our products. And Hammelmann is a key high pressure pump supplier to many cleaning equipment manufacturers like EcoClean. Okay, that's one case. Next slide, please. So the next one is a case on Techniclean 90 XBC, so the product that is formulated without MEA. It's an automotive OEM in Europe. And what the customer is doing here, he is manufacturing planetary gears made out of steel. So the machining process is carried out with neat cutting oil, our Castrol Honilo 980. And he's cleaning the residues off in a relatively small Robertson cleaning machine. The pressure is low. The temperature is also quite low, 28 to 32 degrees. The customer was facing the challenge with a competitor product with a short bath life of 6 weeks. And if you can nicely see at the bottom left pictures, they had a lot of bacterial contamination. So this is really ugly if you look at this. And I hope you can see it well. So you've got a lot of fungi on the left picture, but also the bath itself looked not very nice after 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. So the customer was changing over to Techniclean 90 XBC. He had a specific requirement on a product that is formulated without MEA. And the outcome was actually a better biostability and particularly elimination of the fungi problem. He had a better working environment for the staff, a much better oil separation, overall good cleaning results, and he could extend the bath life from 4 to 12 weeks. So he could triple the bath life. Overall, the concentration levels have been kept the same, so that obviously the customer has achieved some saving. And by the way, on the right two pictures below that, these are the pictures and images how the bath looks like after 12 weeks. So on the left-hand side, competitor product 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Right-hand side, Techniclean 90 XBC after 12 weeks. So the overall saving at this particular case have been 75 liters of waste disposal cost saving, obviously the same on freshwater saving, and hard savings per year on 5,500 euros in such a small cleaning machine. Not to mention the better working environment for the staff. Next slide, please. Another one on Techniclean 90 XBC as well on an automotive OEM in Europe. In this case, the customer is manufacturing a cylinder block, aluminum cylinder block, so you can see its engine manufacturing. The previous process before washing is a honing process, so he's honing the cylinder liners with Honilo 981. It's a relatively small cleaning machine of 1,600 liter, and the spray pressure is relatively low, 4 to 8 bar, temperature 55 degrees. Also in this case, the customer has seen a very high level of contamination to carry over of the components into the wash bath. So you see a number here, 50,000 liters of honing oil being dragged into the wash fluid per year. So consequently, the customer had to change his bath on a regular basis, basically weekly, because of the high oil load. So he was changing over from another Castrol product, Techniclean 227 to Techniclean 90 XBC, and immediately recognized much stronger demulsification properties. So the cleaning results have been excellent. He had a much better oil separation and much lower dirt levels in the cleaning tank. So, I mean, this is an extreme. I mean, he could really increase bath life from 1 week to 25 weeks. So instead of changing the bath 50 times a year, roughly speaking, he's now changing the bath twice a year. I mean, this is quite extreme, I must say, but it's a good example on the performance differences to the previous product. And I think if we are proving that we can extend bath life, at least double it or triple it, that could be a significant benefit and saving to the customer. Another aspect to that was that the customer was trying to reduce the cleaning temperature from 55 to a lower cleaning temperature to save energy cost. In the first step, he went to 50 degrees C, that's by just reducing by 5 degrees, and without any problem. And he also decreased the use of the concentrate from 112 to 48 liters per week, which is not good for Castrol, but anyway, it's a good success and it's keeping the customer quite happy. So he overall had a saving of heat energy of 115 kilowatt per hour, a waste reduction of 70,000 liters and 100,000 liters of fresh water. And overall, he could reduce his overall cost calculated by part by 68%, which means in hard savings, almost 28,000 euros a year. And you must consider this is just a small cleaning machine. And this customer has not only one, he has dozens of this kind of cleaning machine. If you go to the next page, please, you see a small image here on this slide, which is a little bit larger on the next one. It's just to show you what was the reason why the customer could achieve a significant increase of bath life, which has to do with the emulsification property and get rid of the tramp oil. So next slide, please. Alina, can you play it one more, please? I've got to see that. This is cool, isn't it? So you see how quickly the oil is separating from the wash fluid. And actually, this is fundamental to really increase bath life and achieve those cost savings. So very good. Let's get to the next case. This is on 45 XBC. Remember, this is the product that has been designed to provide excellent corrosion protection. So we have an automotive OEM in Europe who's manufacturing camshafts and crankshafts. The previous process is a machining process with a neat cutting oil. Unfortunately, a competitor is in the game here. And the cleaning processes, there are different cleaning machines with 36 bar of pressure and a temperature between 20 and 35 degrees. The challenge, there have been different challenges. So one was that the previous product was containing a formaldehyde releasing biocide. The product was quite unstable, requiring a regular system change. There have been very high reject rates because the customer is actually having an infrared inspection to check the camshafts and the crankshafts for any cracks or damages. And there have been a lot of residues on the component and spots, which were giving failure rates, which basically have been triggered by the residue, not really by a failure. So they have very high rejection rates, above 90% rejection rate, which was not acceptable. Further, they are also taking some of the parts, putting them on their warehouse or getting them to assembly, but they are also transporting some of the components to their facilities in the US, so overseas transportation. Obviously, they're packaging in the right way, but there have been corrosion issues on the components when they arrived in the USA. Plus, there have been severe system forming. So a lot of issues the customer were facing. So we were introducing this technically 45 XBC, given some kind of pre-testing and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, they had excellent cleaning property. They have very low corrosion inhibitor residue on the component, which actually has reduced the rejection rate on the infrared inspection significantly. We could extend the fluid life, reducing the maintenance and the downtime cost. And also foam levels could be significantly increased. I think the key fact is here the excellent corrosion protection, so for more than 135 days of indoor storage. So the customer has done some tests treated some parts, cleaned some parts, and put it on the warehouse and monitored it for more than 135 days without corrosion. This is a little bit of a spoiler here because it says it tells the customer, unfortunately, but it's actually, they have done internal tests, humidity tests and so forth, and the product has passed all the test requirements. So overall, the savings that could be achieved on a cost per unit basis have been more than $59,000. And this does not include any kind of reduced reject rates or manual inspection requirements, which is typically then also associated with headcount cost and so on and so forth. So quite impressive case on the 45 XBC. So next one, please. Next slide, please. This is just a quick summary on the testing that has been done in terms of corrosion protection. And you see the test regime. It's a kind of a modified humidity test to represent the typical storage conditions at the customer side. And you see at the bottom the test results of the competitor cleaner. Then TechniClean as Extra FF, which is has been our standard product so far when it gets into final wash operations, and an excellent corrosion protection, and TechniClean 45 XBC and how it correlates within this specific humidity test. On the right-hand side, you see the test regime and how the tests have been conducted. So you see with TechniClean 45 XBC, we could really develop a product that even outperformed our best product in class that we had so far. Next slide, please. Another one, and in this case, it's we are authorized to use the customer name, which is Renault, which is I think one of our most impressive cases we have in so far. So, and this is not just about XBC. It's here you can really see an integrated approach of different things, you know, getting together. On one side, you have our Alusol SL61 XBB coolant, and the other side, TechniClean 80 XBC, and actually the customer is, since more than 1 year, recycling the cleaner back into the coolant system, into their coolant systems on a regular basis. So this is a continuous recycling. Plus, the customer has a smart control implemented to monitor the coolant system conditions. So, and overall, with this recycling option and the use of the right product technology, XBB and XBC together, customer could save 130,000 euros on the coolant side through coolant usage as such, so 2 life savings and rejection rates, and another 25,000 euros on the cleaner side, and it actually saved 1 million liters of waste volume, and another 1 million liters obviously at the same time with top-up water. It's also worth considering that the 25,000 euro doesn't sound that much, considering the sizes of the systems, but it's also worth considering that the cost per cubic meter of waste disposal in this case is only 25 euros per cubic meter, because the customer is actually handling waste streams on its own. If you would put this to an external third party, you could easily calculate 100 euros. So the savings, in fact, would have been 100,000 euros if the whole volume of 1 milliliters would have been required to dispose externally. On the bottom, you also see relatively small, but it's worth mentioning, for all those efforts, we in Castrol, we have achieved an environmental award at Renault. Last year, and I would say congratulations to our Iberia team who really made this happen at Renault. Great case of an integrated approach. Next slide, please. This is this is just the images in large that you've seen. You see the environmental award, and you see Severino on the right-hand side with staff from Renault receiving the award. Okay, I think last but not least, another case on TechniClean 80 XBC. In this case, this is an automotive supplier in Germany, and this customer is manufacturing gearboxes made of aluminium, and they are machined with Alusol SL51 XBB. Here we have a high pressure cleaning process of 300 bar and a temperature between 50 and 60 degrees. The customer has made the choice to test TechniClean 80 XBC in combination with SL51 XBC because they have a sustainability policy worldwide and guidelines, and they are actively searching for improvements, which particularly for Germany, for the German plan, means saving resources, say reducing waste disposal cost and water consumption, and also consolidating the cleaners inventory. So in May 2019, trials have been started with Techniclean 80 XBC, and they also then started to recycle 80 XBC into two central system coolant systems of 55 cubic meters each. So, I mean, we are beyond trial stage. So the customer is on production with this solution for quite some time now. But the outcome was that all the required cleanliness levels are met. The recycling of the Techniclean 80 XBC into the SL51 XBC has happened without compromising machining performance. And another interesting aspect, they have also found an improved chip quality, which basically was related to a reduced humidity post-centrifugation. They also found better cleaning and rinsing properties in the cutting operation. Another thing that is to do with the maintenance of the coolant fluid is an improved filter cake on the belt filter, and they just find that the recycling as such, which they have to do manually, not automatically like at Renault, they have not found any excessive work hours related to the recycling versus the previous waste disposal cost. And there have been several savings. So in 2019 they saved 150,000 liters of top-up water. They had a cost saving of 18,000 euros, and because they are using a distillation system, they could also calculate a CO2 saving, which in this case was 4,266 kilograms. That was for 2019. And the 2020 plan is even higher than that. So they are now aiming for 250,000 liters of cleaner that they're going to recycle into the coolant, and a cost saving of 30,000 euros and a CO2 saving of 7,100 kilograms. Also a quite effective and interesting case, like the Renault one, on the option to and the ability to recycle the XBC cleaners into the XBB coolant system. Next slide, please. So on the opportunity, I don't want to tell too much because I think Kai has a session on marketing assets. But what we have developed so far is a brochure on Techniclean XBC, a sales presenter, as well as a video that you have just seen, and that is available for use at websites, customer visits, presentation, trade fairs, and so on and so forth. And obviously, we have also created a press release, and which is basically the fundament for certain lead campaigns that we are actively promoting at the moment in Europe. Next slide, please. Okay, so where are the opportunities? This is just an attempt to say, okay, what kind of customers can we look at? And obviously, we can always look for new customers out there, but this is just a food for thought in terms of looking at our existing customer base. I mean, this is normalized to 100, so it does not mean we only have 100 customers, but it's out of our sales data and analysis where we found that out of 100 customers where we are selling coolants to, only 37 out of them are buying our cleaners. And this also involves obviously solvent cleaners. So I was also looking at which of those customers are buying water-based process cleaners, and only 17 out of 100 buying water-based cleaners out of 100. Then you may say, well, okay, we've got customers who are using more heavier cutting oils, and maybe this is not appropriate. This is where they use solvents, and so on and so forth. But what we can say for sure, everywhere where customers typically have a machining process conducted with soluble oils, there's typically a water-based cleaning process where the kind of mild alkaline cleaners such as XBC would play a role and are used. So out of those 100 customers, 73 customers are soluble oil customers, and only 15 out of them buying cleaners. Another kind of breakdown would be looking at customers buying XBB coolants. which makes sense, obviously, to combine that with an XBC cleaner. 24 customers out of 100 buying XBB coolants, but only 9 out of them buying cleaners. So when we just look at those customers and the opportunity that lies between the gap of, let's say, if you look at the middle column, 15 to 37, there are more than 50 customers where we're not selling cleaners. And well, if I would be in sales, I would definitely have a look at my customer slate and trying to understand why customers are buying our coolants. What are they doing in terms of cleaning their parts? What kind of process they have? What kind of competitors are using, and see what the opportunity is. So it's actually there within our existing customer base, not necessarily only to do with go out hunting for new customers. Next slide, please. So as a summary, so you see on the top line all the kind of potential benefits that technically XBC can offer to our customers. The top line is really on the product itself. So whether it's related to productivity in terms of cleanliness levels, the high pressure application, no foam. It's not a 2-pack system like we have with many other, we see with many competitor products. So it's actually, we're talking about, when you think about recycling in terms of 2 independent technologies, XBB coolants and XBC cleaner, not a 2-pack. It's hard water stable, it's multi-metal compatible, at least 80 and 90 XBC. And then there's a whole bucket on that you could put under sustainability, whether it's on operational cost, which means energy cost, or extended bath life. And then everything around compliance, whether it's related to boron, formaldehyde. MEA is a specific case that comes more and more in specific countries and regions, and so on and so forth. So this is around the product. And on the bottom, you see the recycling opportunity, which gives another potential benefit to customers that are able and willing to make use of that benefit, saving further costs through the recycling into the XBB coolant. This all addresses the main major trends we have seen at the beginning that you see on the left-hand side. And it does not mean that your customers must have all of those issues. But if you can get into the conversation with one of your customers that we have indicated in the previous slide that is not buying our cleaner, getting into a conversation, and you can only identify one of the pain points that is addressed here above, that you can get into a conversation and hopefully then create some lead customers for trials. So next slide, please. That's about it. So yeah, I'm ending here, and I hope you can take away some good information to go out growing with our innovative Castrol TechniClean XBC offer. And I think I'm now handing over to Steve.
Thank you, Michael. Really, really interesting stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. My name's Steve Fordham, and myself and my colleague Mark will cover a few aspects around troubleshooting, which we hope you'll find useful. Now, obviously, troubleshooting might suggest that you could be called in to deal with problems, but it's also about helping customers and building relationships with customers, but by being able to help them overcome some process problems. So we'll look into a few bits and pieces for you over the next few slides. Could we have the next slide, please? One activity that's always really useful is to use something such as we see on the screen here. We call it a process analysis. It's about compiling information, building your knowledge base around the customer's process. In this particular version of this document, we're looking at a cleaner because the subject today is XBC. But this kind of methodology can apply to anywhere where you're already selling products or looking to increase your sales. The more you know about the customer's business and the process that you're focusing, the better the discussion you'll have with them. So on the bottom left, you see here, it's about just putting information in about the customer, your contact, some information about the machine. We'll use a cleaner's example, which this one's particularly aimed at. Parts made, materials. I'm not going to read everything here, but you can see it's all building the knowledge base around that particular process. What is the soil that needs to be cleaned off in this case? degree of soil, what's the next step. When we look on the right, we're looking at, is the cleaner a multi-stage process, stage 1, 2, and 3 there? And if it is, then you would fill in the details down columns 1 through to 3. I mean, typically you could have a wash bath and then a rinse bath. Obviously, sometimes there are multi-stage washes, and you could add in the columns as necessary. Further down, we can see there's a section here on drying. This would allow you to capture the technology. Are they using heat to dry? Is it just a blow off? And what is the drying time? And finally, a little bit about maintenance. What is the maintenance regime, if any, around filter changes? Is there any equipment within the wash system to distill and reuse the cleaner? Is there an oil splitter? So it's all good information for you to compile. As and when you go back to the customer, you can have a valued conversation with him, knowing that you've got some knowledge around the process. So you could do this for as many different processes as you wish. I think at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Mark to talk a little bit more about process documentation. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we've got a tool in development. It's a tool that we're working on in conjunction with the XBC products as well. And the plan is to launch this document at the end of the month. It is called the Cleaner Control Plan. And in my opinion, it's a great tool to aid a successful operation on customer sites. Within the control plan, it's based on the traffic light system. And so you have facility there to put in your lower limits and your upper limits. Let's start on the actual top of the plan, which you can install your system, your product, and your customer, which will be tailored for your customer needs. Additional information is also system capacity, part machined, the material, the operations, and the operation type. That could be grinding, that could be milling, that could be honing, etc. On the right-hand side is more is details for the customer itself. They may want to put their project number, charge date, etc. So to just overlap this, it will be on one page, but so we could see this quite clearly, it's on 2 pages at the moment. So let me take the left-hand column, and we'll just explain roughly that we're looking for the pH, which obviously like the concentration through alkalinity, chloride levels, ferrous corrosion, and free oil. And well, we won't go on to page 2 at the moment, but on page 2, we also have dirt, the hardness of the product, and the bacteria and fungus. And as I say, this is all worked on the traffic light principle, and these parameters will be set individually with your customer, depending on the type of material and the type of operation. Could we go back a slide, please? So as we say, along the top column there, we've got the method name, which is the method of testing, the unit of measure, and there'll also be a frequency there. That could be from daily to monthly, depending on the method required, and could be within the laboratory, or it could be a site laboratory, or the customer themselves with example pH slides. So we have the traffic light system there from the lower level to the upper level, and the corrective actions box, which is just next to it. These will be pre-populated to a degree by the engineering team, so that it give you some sort of aid on site, along with the notes at the end. But obviously these boxes can be added to by yourselves for each individual customer and each individual customer site and operation. So as I say, that is planned to be launched at the end of the month with a generic XBC problem solving control plan. So next slide, please. And next slide, that's it, thank you. So emulsion cleaners, and these are the main elements to consider. We have a test element, we have a test method, and we have a test priority. These can be used in conjunction with the control plan. So I won't touch on all of them, but for example, concentration. We have a refractometer or wash test kit, and then all washes to be routinely checked and recorded. Now, to improve the operation, the smooth running operation, I'd always suggest that we do the routine recording and testing of all the washes. This is also an early warning system if pH is dropping or concentration is running low, etc. So I would suggest that we always routinely, whether weekly, daily, monthly, depending on the operation, keep a routine report on all these elements below, and they are the concentration, the pH, insolubles, which normally is not really our product. It's normally down to filtration, but customers may consider it's our problem until we go in and solve, or to go in and to have a look at it. Tramp oil content, bacteria and fungus, corrosion testing, and also hardness and chlorides. So that is basically the main elements to consider when you're looking at the problems with the product or possible issues with the product, and not always down to us, very rarely down to us. So, okay, thank you. And with that, I'll pass back to Steve, please.
Thanks, Mark. That's great. Thank you. So we're looking a little bit more now in depth about troubleshooting. So we've kind of built a picture where hopefully you already know a little bit about the customer's process. If you've been called into site, he might be asking you to help him with a problem, or could be a criticism over the product. Now we're calling this XBC troubleshooting, but the methodology applies to all cleaners. You may well be in at a customer, and there may be one of the older cleaners, and maybe having learnt what you did from Michael, it could be an opportunity to actually upsell the customer to XBC when you're troubleshooting another cleaner. But anyway, the points here on the left are common problems that we see with cleaners. You can see we've got foam, residual stain, rust, and corrosion, either ferrous and non-ferrous metal. And some possible causes, and to the right, possible resolutions. So this sort of thing is going to be very handy if you've got a document like this, or if you're experienced enough to think about these things and know to ask the questions. They're going to help you find out what the problems could be within this particular wash. So, one of the things that is key is that you go in and you ask lots and lots of questions to find out what's happening. As Mark was saying, it would be great if all customers had some kind of control plan. They may just have a more basic chart than Mark was explaining, but it'd be good to know what their key process parameters are, because experience that we find in the field is very often problems like these that we're seeing here come about because the customer is not keeping the system within the desired limits. Mark was talking about concentration. We could go in there and we could look at a problem, and it could be simply that we're not sticking to the right levels of concentration as we would recommend in the control plan. So I touch on a couple of these points in each section. You can read them yourselves, or there'll be information to share afterwards. Foaming, it could be down to low temperature. So yes, we would increase the temperature. It could also be due to the wrong water quality. Too soft a water supply could lead to foaming. So besides going in and asking your customer lots of questions, it's always worth remembering, and I'm sure you do, to go to the site armed with your pH papers, refractometer, some water test, hardness strips, and so on. So you can actually get some of these tests done yourself while you're standing at the process. Foam could also be due to incorrect pressures and low fluid levels. So these are things, again, to check. In terms of staining, that could be too hard a water. Chlorides could be building up and causing a problem. So in that case, if we can introduce some softened water, possibly through a demin system, it's worth thinking about that. Water is obviously approximately 97% of the volume of a system. So if that's not managed properly, that's always going to be an area of concern. Sometimes it's worth having the customer regularly check the feed water into a wash so that you've got some data around the condition of the feed water. Concentration could be too high. and that can cause some staining. And again, that's one of those reasons where your customers let the process get out of the control plans, the required concentration. Rust can be due to bacteria. So it could be that we need to treat with bacteria. Now we know the XBC range as part of the XBC package is bioresistant, but there are times when contamination could occur, so it's worth treating. If it's treatable, if not, you would have to think about dumping the system. There could be times, as we've said, that the cleaner may not be appropriate, and why not look to sell them perhaps a higher performing product from the product line positioning portfolio that Castrol have got. Corrosion could again be temperature or water as the causes, and we've got some opportunities there to resolve those things by hardening the water system and increasing the temperature. I think that's all for me for now, and I'll hand back to Mark to carry on with a little bit more. I beg your pardon, I think it's still me, sorry. So I'll be getting confused here. So sort of this is really another way of looking at the troubleshooting, and this is more of a systematic approach to one of the causes in that troubleshooting guide we just looked at, foaming. That's probably one of the more common issues that we see with washes. And this is simply giving you a step-by-step process flow of things to look at in a structured manner to see what the problem might be for foaming. So we can see the problem statement in the red box on the left-hand side is foaming. And we can see that it's encouraging us to have a look and see what's happening. We could see high foam levels, possibly the cleaner's overflowing at the bath, and it's giving poor cleaning. And the idea here is to check from bottom to top each of these characteristics. The one on the very bottom of the chart in the middle, high concentration. And we've got a yes, no, okay choice to make here. If it's good, then we move on and look at the next possible problem. So if it's not, then we adjust the concentration. Then we go up the list, look at residence time, look at filters, look at the water, look at the fluid application and fluid level. Now, if you don't find the problem, having looked at all of that, then clearly there's something much more fundamental going on. But always, when you're doing this, always look at that cleaner control plan to see what the appropriate features and parameters should be. So hopefully that's just a very quick whistle stop at foaming and some troubleshooting. And I think now it's Mark's turn. So over to you, Mark. I think you might be muted, Mark.
I thought I'd covered that. This is also a problem-solving flowchart covering air entrainment, which is a common problem amongst changed over systems with whether there's residence time or not enough residence time. And Steve done an excellent overview of the last flowchart, so I won't go into too much detail, but it is basically a go, not okay or no okay scenario on the flowcharts, which I'm sure most of you are aware of and are covered in many aspects of the control plan. Touching on the control plan, in my experience, and I think in most of the team's experience on the engineering team, when we have gone to site and there's an issue, it's almost about 90% of the time it's because they're out of control. That can be low concentration, that can be low pH, and in some cases people are putting in additives which are not actually required. And not, you know, by all means you can put additives in if you've got an instant problem which is going to stop production, but mainly with the XBB and the XBC products, they should be self-reliant, and they're almost like a self-healing product if you keep to the right concentrations. So I won't touch any more on the flow chart there, because I think that was covered in Steve's last text as well, the actual workings of it. And so I'd like to pass back to the presenters.
And
sorry,
Go on, Steve.
Just before we do, sorry, there's a little poll here just to see if those of you listening to the presentation could decide from the list of options coming up here, what would you do to identify the right cleaner for your customer? So we'd invite you to see which one of the following answers is the most appropriate one. Thank you. And clearly, I think Mark and I would agree with everybody there. Thank you. That's right. The more you know about the process, the better you're able to give some guidance on what would be the right cleaner for the process. So thank you very much for your interaction there. And I think we've got to hand back now to share some marketing assets. Thank you, guys.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kai Hecke. I'm quickly leading you to the marketing assets that are available. And just comment and thank you to Mark and Steve for your great presentation on the problem solving part. And my recommendation is really use a process analysis. I did this during my sales time all the time, and it helped me always to understand the process of the customers. So yes, we can see we have, as Michael already mentioned, we have external sales presenters available that you can use. They are available in German, in English, and French, and Dutch, Italian, and Spanish, and Portuguese. Then we have a great TechniClean brochure that is really just on cleaners, available for Germany. It's available for UK. In France, there we need to check whether we have the VX numbers in Swedish, etc. Press releases, the video you have seen already. It's really a great tool to give a rough idea about the XBC technology, and I think it's good that we have it in various languages available. Then we have advertorials, animated static and digital banners, and emailers. So in case you don't have access for this for the moment, please reach out to your local contacts. Either your distributor business manager can support you in getting access to this, or your local activation managers. And I think in the interest of, let's say, a good Q&A, I would say I hand over to Adrian that we can have an interesting discussion regarding Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kai, and a real big thanks to Michael, Mark, and Steve for your content and for your presentations. I really hope you find it useful. So we have a number of questions. I did just want to go back over some of the ones I think may have been answered, but I just want to make sure that you know, everybody is aware, because they may have been answered within some of the content, but I think I'd just like to go back over them. So Michael, first question, do we have a Hammelmann approval for TechniClean 45 XBC?
We do not have a Hammelmann approval yet. It has not been envisaged to apply for it at this point of time, because typically the areas where the 45 XBC is supposed to be used as a final wash, which usually is a lower pressure process with higher volume streams, but it does not mean that we cannot do it. It's just if the case is there and the need is there, I don't see a reason why we should not apply for it. I mean, for the 80 and the 90 XBC, it's more obvious because it's also used in the intermediate wash operations where a lot of high pressure applications are used.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, which again you may have answered, what is, I'm assuming, what is the concentration of 45 XBC for cam crankshafts cleaning? Interesting corrosion protection power. Thank you.
Yeah, in this case that we have seen, it's about 4%. But I would say it's kind of, I think that's the minimum you would need to have that such kind of, level of protection.
Great, thank you. Is Techniclean available out of machines for manual applications as manual spray, for instance?
Yeah, I think if I understand that right, it's kind of, can we use Techniclean XBC for manual cleaning operations, let's say machine surfaces or workshops or whatever around the machining center, because it's compatible with the XBB, and if the fluid is flushing into the coolant, it doesn't harm it. So we have done initial testings on cleaning such kind of surfaces, such a kind of maintenance cleaning operation, with some good results, and also some tests have been started with the product to be used as a floor cleaner, which also looks quite promising. So I would say in principle, yes, but I think we need a little bit more time to consolidate and share further information in due course.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Michael. So when topping up XBB products with XBC, does the demulsified oil residue have to be skimmed first before adding to XBB?
I think in principle, I would not expect to see massive oil load in a cleaner, because the system is typically good emulsifying, and you usually have an oil skimmer or coalescer at the cleaning equipment in bypass or directly. So a certain level of oil, I don't think it harms the machining process and the coolant as such. Also, a filtration is typically involved in a cleaning machine, which is equipped with a filter system. However, whenever we are recycling the used cleaner back into the coolant, I would always recommend to do this on the dirty side. That means before filtering.
All right, thank you, Michael. Next one's regarding bacterial contamination. Which biocide is recommended for XBB, XBC?
From my perspective, any that works with coolants and synthetics. Christian, I heard you wanted to say something. Oh, maybe I got it wrong. Yeah, but any biocide that works with a synthetic coolant or a soluble oil. But I have to say, I've not heard about cases so far where the use of a biocide additive is needed. So I mean, typically you run a cleaning system at elevated temperature where you hardly have biocide problems. I mean, in the one case you have seen where the neat oil has been cleaned off with a fungi problem, the competitor product had a problem. We haven't. So if somebody has a problem with XBC on microbiology, let me know. I would be quite interested in it. But so far I haven't seen it. But if we need a biocide, use a standard one.
Okay, great.
Just to add to that, if I can,
Yep,
we normally find that working to the top end of the concentration level within the control plan usually dissipates any issues we have. So, as Michael says, we very rarely need any biocide addition, only in extreme cases, normally from outside influences.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think if maybe to add on that, I mean, when you look at some screenings that we have done, we can definitely say above 3%, we haven't seen any kind of, we've almost seen a kind of good microbiology stability on the product on its own. But on top, in practice, as I said, there comes a lot of energy, so heat energy on top, as well as the fluid usually is in a strong circulation. So a lot of air has been tracked into the system, which also helps to avoid microbiology.
All right, Michael. Apologies if you have already answered these, but again, it'd be good to just go back over them. Can you measure the XBB concentration by refractometer even, or how you do it in customer site? Is there any way to do it by titration?
I know it's the preferred option because it's quick and easy, but I would not recommend to use a refractometer method with a cleaner. Why? It works well with a fresh solution because it's you're not having any influence from any other kind of contamination. But when you get coolant into the fluid, it immediately compromises the reading, because you have a lot of organics and oil that is basically giving you a wrong measure.
Okay, thank you. And how is it possible to control the concentration when you mix XBC with XBB?
That's a very good question. So in theory, we also thought a lot about it, how to do it, because we felt, well, customers want to know how much XBC they have in their coolant system. We didn't get that request yet, although we have been prepared. So what we have done, we have the technically 80 and 90 XBC, at least they are equipped with a so-called tracer. In theory, we could analyze this also in the coolant system, but the downside is we can only do it in our labs. So there is no easy fix and ready solution that we can be done on site. So the sample would have to be sent, if a customer is really asking for that, to our lab in MGB, and they can do the testing.
Thank you, Michael. Lots more questions coming in, which is fantastic. Is it possible to get more information about system for mixing XBC with fresh soluble? There are some pumps, tanks, etc.
I'm not sure whether I get this. In principle, I mean that the solubility of the XBC as such is that easy. I mean, it's not an emulsion; it's a solution. So you basically just, it dissolves immediately in fresh water. If this is not the question, so you typically do not need a pump or whatever to pre-mix or to, like with a soluble oil, so it readily dissolves. But if the question is a different one, let me know.
Okay. Do we have any experience of, I guess it's to do with XBC within the aerospace sectors? We sell a lot of 45 XBB.
What I want to do in this case, I know there are certain activities ongoing at the moment, and I want to forward this question to Steve, because I think he must have the most up-to-date information on that one.
That's a great question. Thanks. The short answer from my experience is that's work in progress. As you can appreciate, with aerospace, we have to satisfy OEM approvals. Now, these usually, as we all know, they take a considerable time to get these approvals, which we're currently working on with some of the majors such as Rolls-Royce and Airbus. So what we'll do, we'll keep everybody posted on this. It's part of our package that Michael was referring to earlier, where we're selling the benefits of the XBB, XBC bundled package and the waste reduction opportunities. So we'll let you know as soon as we've got some firm results for the major OEMs.
Good, thank you, Steve. So yeah, in progress with that. What is the amount of XBC that could be recovered on XBB?
If we would just
Depends,
know. No. I mean, really, honestly, when we launched the product end of 2018, we were quite conservative. We were saying we think we can recycle 10% of a 2% cleaning solution back into the coolant system. So that means 10% from a volume perspective of the coolant system replaced with XBB used XBC cleaner. Reality basically told us this is by far has been by far too conservative. So we haven't seen, we've been all the cases where the recycling is already taking place on a regular or continuous or discontinuous basis. We've never seen any kind of impact. So imagine Renault is recycling the cleaner continuously, about 3 cubic meters a day into their central coolant system. I mean, it's a 200 cubic meter system, coolant system, but if you consider that, you know, every day they're recycling something back, and we haven't seen anything. So it's hard to say. We haven't, I think, yet reached the point where we can say that's the maximum.
I understand. And in respect of Scintilo, have we done any testing of compatibility with the Scintilo range?
I mean, in principle, they are of the same chemistry. I mean, Scintilos are usually, except maybe 75 EF, they are synthetic formulations like the XBC cleaners. So in terms of compatibility and mixability, I don't think there is a big problem. And as far as compatibility and machining is concerned, I don't think we have any experience yet. I don't know. I'm not sure whether Rudy is still on the call and could answer that. But we will. Let's keep that question for a moment and we come back on that, because I would not expect and envisage any significant problems. But this is maybe a different level regarding to the amount that could be recycled, maybe.
Okay.
But it's not designed specifically to be recycled in Centilo, to be honest. It's really on the XBB side.
Okay. Cool. Next question. Will adding XBC to XBB affect the coolant concentration by refractometer due to the high index values?
No, we don't see this. Actually, it may have an impact on alkalinity. If you measure alkalinity through titration, let's say, there might be a small impact. I mean, this is the typical method you would apply on the cleaner itself, but on the refractometer reading, there's very little impact on refractometer reading, as far as we can say for now. So in theory, you know, if refractometer reading works, and if you do something else like, you know, oil splitting or something, that would be ideal. But that's, you know, nothing different to if you would use the soluble oil on its own.
Great, thank you. Next one's a really good question. If I put technically an 80 XBB or XBC, I guess it is, pure straight into the cooling lubrication, would I achieve better cleaning properties in the cooling lubrication?
I know there have been, I think there have been trials doing that. I'm not sure whether as a concentrate, but would we also see, and you've seen it, I think, in the one case with one of the customers who have seen certain improvements in terms of filter cake quality, in terms of wetting and so on and so forth. What we have seen is recycling the cleaner back into the coolant could have a positive impact on foam characteristics of the coolant, and it could also stabilize the alkalinity. So it's a positive impact. If I would take the concentrate, maybe not, but I'm not sure. Maybe there might be some people already out there who've tried this.
Thanks, Michael. Next question, interesting. Do you have titration kit available, which we can also buy from customers as well? Not to my knowledge.
This is a very good question, because when, and this is not only applies to XBC cleaners, it's a general question. I mean, we have local solutions. In Germany, we have the so-called mini lab, which is a small box where you have a titration fluid and indicators and so on and so forth, which also works for both coolants and cleaners, but this is a local solution. In principle, I would always recommend customers and users out there to get equipped with a relatively simple titration equipment, which is a plastic bottle and a burette, which you can buy in a lab store, which is relatively easy to handle even on site, and an indicator. So we typically recommend use methyl orange on this. I think the factor is given on the product data sheet. So I would rather go this route, because it's more accurate than the mini lab that we are using in for instance in Germany.
Okay, but yeah, I think Timu's asked that question. If Timu, you think that's a big opportunity for Castrol in terms of equipment availability, then I think that's something we pick up in another conversation. So, but great question. What would be your best recommendation to replace technically an HP if the product does not exist anymore tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't see this tomorrow coming soon, but if clear answer, 80 XBC.
80 XBC, quick one, yeah. Does alkalinity improve when we add XBC to XBB?
As I said before, it's, well, whether we can say improve, I don't know, but it stabilizes the alkalinity, which is definitely a positive impact.
Okay. If pH drops on the cleaning bath, what are the corrective actions?
Well, I think if a pH drops in a cleaning bath, there might be something wrong with it anyway. But if the concentration is right and pH is low, and microbiology could be a problem. I mean, you could always work with a pH boost. I mean, you got to be careful when you're cleaning aluminum, not to kind of add too much. But for instance, if let's say an 80 XBC bath is dropping, and you could even, and when you listened before, maybe use the 45 XBC as a pH boost. But in principle, I would always be careful if a pH drops significantly at the right level of concentration. I would have a more in-depth look on the quality of the cleaning fluid. And I think it's worth mentioning that everybody is expecting that we always get the similar bath lives with cleaning systems compared to coolant. This is not the case, because the cleaning system is a system that has to deal with a lot of soil and contamination different to the coolants. That's why typical intervals of changing used to be more frequent versus coolant systems.
Thank you, Michael. Right, there's 2 more questions left. We'll take those and then we'll wrap up with a poll to finish. What effects would the combined mixture have on equipment designed for recovering coolant, e.g. aqua save units?
Ooh. Not sure if I can answer that. Steve, Mark, are you able to give an answer to that one? Otherwise, we
could have to look into that a little.
Yeah,
maybe
we'll check out.
But our assumption is that there will be not a big difference whether you add XBC or not. So the coolant will behave as it behaves before too in this kind of equipment.
There is Rudy. Yeah, thank you.
Hello,
Sorry,
Rudy.
I wasn't. I couldn't join earlier. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you. Is it possible to measure a cleaner concentration by refractometer? I think has that been asked?
I think we answered that.
Yeah,
No,
that's been,
wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, and we'll take the final question here from Ian. Does the XBC affect machining performance of XBB?
No, not as far as we know so far. We have done tapping torque tests at the beginning when we haven't had the experience from the field, and we haven't seen a significant impact here, as well as the same has been proven so far in the field. So no, the answer is no at the moment. We don't see that.
Fabulous, great. Well, thank you all for all the questions, and thank you, Michael, Steve, and Mark for your responses. Hopefully, they've given you some clarity. Brilliant. Okay, to finish then, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, we have after our series of high performance lubricant webinars, the next 3 sessions, we have a wildcard session at the end of June, and we wanted to get your views on what you want to see. So I think it's probably best to give you a heads up on this, on what you're going to see, because you may not have the full context. So there is Castrol Smart Control, which is our new real-time fluid condition monitoring system, which is in the process of being made available to our distributors. We've been slightly delayed because of the current COVID situation, but we've got some really good results with a lot of our customers on that, and we would take you through that in more detail, business model, etc. Potential on gas to liquid product solutions, rust preventatives, and Michael would play a big part in any training delivered on that, or advice on coolant system management during and post shutdown, given the current situation. Obviously, I know a lot of customers have started up already, but it may be still of interest to you. So if we could take if we now run the poll and take your opinion on which ones you would, or which one is your preference that you would like to see, and then we'll see the results and take it from there. We'll give you 20 seconds or so just to complete on that. And if there is a clear winner, it will make it easier. If there isn't, then we'll review that. So, okay, Alina.
Me again.
There you go. Okay, well, there is a clear winner. Let's be honest, but I'm also recognizing actually there's interest in all of the others. I'm not going to commit that we will be able to run four webinars in that time period, but we will. I think there's a commitment, Michael, which should be good, that we will commit to the rust preventatives, but we will we will discuss internally how we communicate. We've already issued some guidance on coolant system management during and post shutdown, so it might be something that we communicate through to you on the call. Smart control, we do intend in any case to do a launch of that, but we will confirm a date. But and also on the gas to liquid product solution. So that's great. I mean, I think hopefully we'll get your additional feedback. I hope you're finding these first two webinars have been of value to you, and our commitment to you as our partners is that we will continue with these, and if successful we can extend the series through to later in the year as well. But with that, again, our time is up, but really big thank you for everybody joining, and we hope that you can join our first high performance lubricant session, which is in 2 weeks time, and we will reconfirm the date and the links through to your distributor business manager and onto you. But really big thanks for your attendance today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.